Hi, welcome to the Feral Pagans YouTube channel. This is your host, the Pagan Therapist, and I'll be diving into the Norse mythology, so to speak, Norse Paganism, and understanding that spiritual practice. And as we've been alluding to on our TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram page, which can all be found at Feral Pagans, we've been talking about understanding the Aesir, which is a book that I wrote and published to help break down essentially who all these Aesir gods are and where they fall. Now, this particular episode, we're going to be covering Odin the Alfather. So if you're not following this YouTube channel, click the link down below, subscribe, follow, like this, and share it with your friends. Now, this particular episode today, we're doing a deep dive into understanding the Allfather and an overview of him. If you're following any of our social media pages, you'll notice that I've been doing an understanding of the Aesir series, but I'm not diving in depth like we are today. So, back to what we were talking about. Understanding the Aesir and diving into Odin the Alfather himself. Now, he is called the Allfather for he is the father of all gods. That is from the Prose Edda. And you'll notice as we go through this that I'm going to quote several different resources. If you ever have questions or want to know about these resources, feel free to ask. Leave the comments down below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Now, Odin is credited from Ymir's flesh the earth was made, and from his blood the sea. Crags from his bones, trees from his hair, and from his skull the sky. Now that's from the Poetic Edda. The Poetic Edda, if you're wondering, is a collection of various poems and skaldic tradition, stories, etc., collected as a whole. And so that's known as the Poetic Edda. Snorling Sturluson is credited for the Prose Edda, which is like a newer version and understanding of this stuff. So when I speak more of the Allfather and we're continue to dive into it, I just want you to know that that's the difference between the two. Now the Havamal, which we'll bring up a couple of times, is the sayings of the High One. So that's the Allfather, what he said, so to speak, and spoke to mankind to give his wisdom and share his wisdom. I'm not going to dive fully into the Havamal, even though it is related to Odin himself, because it's a different book and it's a lengthier process, so to speak. We don't have time to fully cover it. So, one of the things that I do want to quote from the Havamal, though, is that Odin himself did hang on Yggdrasil. I know that I hung on a windy tree, 9 long nights, wounded with a spear, dedicated to Odin, myself to myself. On that tree of which no man knows from where its roots run. Now that's the Havamal, stanza 138 from the Poetic Edda. That's Odin talking about himself, piercing himself with Gungnir, his spear, and hanging on Yggdrasil to obtain wisdom and knowledge to give to mankind. Why this is important is because Odin and his two brothers Vili and Vi are also credited with creating mankind. They did so in a whole nother story, and I'll dive into that in a minute. But he also wanted to bring knowledge and wisdom. Odin's two biggest symbols that people associate with him are Huginn and Muninn. Huginn being thought, Muninn being memory. And they are tasked essentially to fly across the 9 realms and bring back him information. Because again, the Allfather's known for his wisdom, his understanding. Well, I wouldn't say understanding completely, but his wisdom and intellect. One of the things that I do want to point out, though, is that even though the Allfather has this thirst for knowledge, essentially, and he dives into these different things, and he did create mankind, he's not exactly known for being a forgiving God, and he's not exactly known for this peaceful demeanor that tends to be brought up when people look at the Allfather or tend to note him as their patron deity. The Allfather's pretty selfish, and that's the truth. It's known through all the different stories that the things he does, the acts he does, even when he goes in disguise and transforms himself to get more information, it's all for him. Now, he does spread some of that out and give some of that to others. Not necessarily gods in particular, but mankind, etc. So, Odin also is known and most commonly known for his place in Vahalla. So he has the seat in Vahalla. That's his realm. Most people know Vahalla, especially because of the show The Vikings, which was produced and given on the History Channel. Yes, Vahalla is a thing. However, it is very common for new heathens or Norse pagan practitioners to feel like they're going to Vahalla to rejoin Odin for some reason or another. The reality is, Odin selects his, lack of a better term, warriors, or in the modern age, soldiers, or whomever fights in war, whatever you want to call them, and takes the best of the best, like the cream of the crop. Because your job, when you have been sent to that realm after you fall, is to help fight in battle in Ragnarok. The reality is, most people aren't going unless you're like a top tier soldier, top tier warrior, and like at the top of your game. Odin doesn't even get first pick either. And so people tend to forget that the Allfather doesn't get first pick. It's actually Freya, which is somebody we'll dive into way later in the series. And she's not even an Aesir, although she does wind up in Asgard. Totally different story. However, Odin also goes by over 200 different names. Now, while I'm not going to dive into all the names because they're a significant amount, it does generate one of the theories that I believe in, which is that all pagan spiritual practices are interconnected. And essentially, if you're worshiping one of the gods under another name, they're still the same. However, this is just a theory of mine. This isn't fact. This isn't something that has been published yet. Just a theory. So, what are some things that Odin would ask for when looking at the modern practitioner? So, what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to sacrifice to become more than you are? What comforts must die so that your truth can live? So, Odin reminds us that not a lot of truths are learned in like open understanding. A lot of it's learned in silence, pain, and very long journeys. Odin's seeking of wisdom and continuing to grow in that showcases that there's suffering that he goes through in the various stories and understanding of that. So how does that play into one's own personal journey? Well, that just means that if you choose to do something and you choose to seek something, it's going to require sacrifice of some sort. The Allfather knew that, and so as modern heathens, we have to understand that we have to be willing to sacrifice to gain something else. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to sacrifice your livelihood or die on a tree. I'm not saying that. Yggdrasil's not seeking you out so that you can hang from the tree and get more knowledge. Odin's already done it. But you may have to sacrifice time. You may have to sacrifice birthdays. You may have to sacrifice spending time with loved ones in order to obtain the knowledge and wisdom that you're seeking and to garnish the essentially path that you want to follow. And it's not always an easy path. And it's not always designed for that same person. So each person's path is unique. So in learning from that and taking that from understanding what we've talked about here, the Allfather himself sacrificed a lot to gain a lot. He shared what he did, which was wisdom. He's credited for pulling out an eye, again, sacrificing and getting the runes, which we use today. Some modern practitioners use it for, divination, magic, whatever you want to call it, Sidir. It's all the same, essentially. Yeah, there's slight differences when you want to dive into the nuances of it. However, the Allfather's credited for giving us those things. Now, he's not the most powerful magic user by any means because he learned from somebody, which again, we'll dive into her later. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe and share, as I had mentioned before. Leave your comments down below, ask your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. If they're not answered here, please follow us on TikTok, Feral Pagans, Facebook, Feral Pagans, or Instagram, Feral Pagans. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and an awesome week, and stay tuned as we post another video next week diving into understanding Frigg, the Allmother. Have a wonderful day. Pagan Therapist out.